25th Sunday of Ordinary Time. I make reference to the first reading of today's liturgy because it's from the book of Wisdom. And it is a description that the gospel writers might have referred to because it's a perfect description of the resistance and the plans of those who are insulted or inconvenienced by the life of a just person, a person doing good works, the person who says the truth, and it's an inconvenience to those who plot against good. Is it a perfect description of the gospel? Be careful. It has its own entity. It is not a prophecy about Jesus, but Jesus does fit into it according to the gospel writers. So it's just a hint that it has its own meaning by itself. But the gospel today, and it has similarity to last Sunday's gospel, that Jesus is going along and he says, I'm doing good things and I'm going to be an inconvenience to others and they aren't going to like me and they will kill me, but I will rise. And of course the apostles have no idea what he's talking about. So they go along and they go into a house and Jesus said, oh, by the way, what were you guys talking about? And they didn't answer. And he said, you were talking about who is going to be first and last. Who will be the greatest? That's what they were talking about. And then Jesus is going to say something inconvenient for them. He's going to say the last are going to be first and the first will be last. And then he takes a child and puts his arms around him and says, if you receive a child like this, that's what it is to be a follower of mine. Well, what's going on there in that gospel? It's a beautiful gospel, actually. It has nothing to do exactly with children and having children and all that. It actually is a thing called a referent personality, and that is a tendency in human beings to get our identity in reference to those with whom I eat dinner or accompany. That is, you tell me who I am, and I will stay close to you. And then there will be another person, and I'll stay close to you. Anybody who gives me a sense of myself is important to me. I am using them. I'm getting my reference of myself from them. We'll come back to that. Why does he take the child? The child can't give any identity to Jesus. Jesus knows who he is. He gets his identity in his prayer, in his experiences, especially with the poor who can't give them his identity. And he speaks inconvenient things, and people don't want to get their personalities, their definition of themselves, their identity. They don't want to get that from Jesus because he's an inconvenience to them. He insults them, especially the rich and the elders of the Jewish community. So he says, this little child isn't giving me anything about how great I am. If you, as my apostles, get your identity from those rich or powerful, and you feel good about yourself because you have a relationship with them or with her, you're getting your identity from false idols. and you become a false idol to yourself. So the gospel is really, if you know who you are, then you don't have to be first. You can be last in the eyes of others, and you can then express who you are rather than impress who you have to be, who you want people to think you are. And Jesus never asked somebody to give himself a false identity. He says, last week, who do people say I am? Well, some say you're a prophet, but I know who I am. And I can live towards my cross, towards being handed over, towards my death, because I get my identity from beyond, from my interior. And I express that more freely. And I insult the culture, and I insult those who get their identity from some false gods. I inconvenience them. And Jesus does inconvenience us. And it's very attentive. It's very good to be attentive in our own awareness about from whom do I get my identity? Whom do I have to be with in order to be who I am? The less I pray, the more I will pray to you to give me me. And Jesus didn't live that way. And he takes that little child and he says, take your place at the end. Take your place among the poor who can't give you anything except a chance to be good to them, to bless them. You will be expressing who you are. You will not asking that you impress people with who you are. That's the people who are greatest, who want to be greatest, are more likely to be impressing. So it's a challenge for us to let our own prayer, it really is what the gospel is. Jesus heard who he was, believed who he was, and did not have to ask others to give him himself. At the Eucharist, we celebrate who God says about us. We say, Amen. I receive me as you ask me to receive you.